All right, howdy. Welcome back. Welcome to EarthX. We've had a great day so far. We're switching into another theme. I know I spoke yesterday. According to the World Economic Forum, misinformation and disinformation is the #1 global threat for 2025. The next session is going to be a session of different myths that we mostly hear. And I'm not going to go in each one because I'm going to let the speakers talk about the myths themselves. But we're very, very honored to have probably one of the most famous EV experts in the world here today. He's so well renowned, he's actually called the EV-angelist. Buzz Smith, come on up. EV-angelist? EV-angelist. Yep. Welcome, Buzz.
Thank you, sir.
Let me get off you.
All right, y'all hear me okay? Thank you, sir. Amazon, $68, any color you want. So, I'm Buzz Smith, the EV-angelist. I've been driving plug-in vehicles since August of 2012. Within a year, I went to work for the dealership that sold me my car. Now, when I brought it home, my wife looked down her nose at this new car and said, "I have no interest in driving that. That's your car." And I just said, cool. Within 60 days, no lie, she traded in her car and got the exact same car I did. So there's something that happens when people get EVs. And Consumer Reports talked about this. Testing. So Consumer Reports talked about this. I saw Chris Harto of Consumer Reports do a speech about the automotive owners' surveys that they send out every year, and they focused on electric vehicles at this point. And what they found is we have overly politicized, believe it or not, electric vehicles in the United States. Now, EVs are not partisan. They are not political. They are not liberal. They are not conservative. You know, when Elon Musk first got famous, all the liberals were calling him Tony Stark, the guy who is Iron Man. You know, he was this brilliant multi-billionaire that was going to save the world and get us to Mars. Then he started his work with Doge, and all the liberals hated him, and all the conservatives fell in love with him. And the bottom line is, I went out in my driveway. I drive a Tesla now. I've had 7 different plug-in vehicles over the last 12 years in our family. But I went out and asked my Tesla, who'd you vote for in the last election? It didn't say anything. It wasn't proud that it voted for Trump. It wasn't proud that it voted for Kamala. It didn't vote because it's not political. Now, Consumer Reports, they actually illustrate this very well. In the United States, if you don't know anything about electric vehicles, 40% of us say, I am never going to own one of those things. Never is a long time. Now, if you see one in your neighborhood, that 40% negative drops to 22%. A friend gets one, drops to 17%. You ride in one just a few times, it drops to 10%. You drive one just a few times, it drops to 4%. So we go 40% of the people saying, I'm never going to own one, to 4%. It dropped by 90% of the negative rating. And why was that? It had nothing to do with politics. What it had to do is what an EV is. And it is the fastest car I've ever owned. And it's not even the fastest one out there. But I've never had a car that could accelerate like this. I used to spend, and my wife she's got a plug-in hybrid. She went and got the oil change recently. It was $85 to change the oil on this car. And it had been so long since I changed oil in the car, I still thought oil changes were $35. But the fact is, I've been driving almost 13 years now and haven't had to change oil at all. Even when I had a plug-in hybrid, it would go 2 years between oil changes before the computer on board would say that there was something up. So right there, I'm saving on oil changes. And that is the big thing about electric vehicles. Not only do they outperform any other kind of vehicle you've had, they also are very cheap to operate. I charge mine at home. I pay in Texas 14.2 cents a kilowatt hour, but I'm getting the dollar equivalent per mile of a car that gets about 100 miles per gallon. It fills up while I sleep. Every day when I leave home, I have a full gas tank. My battery's fully charged. I can go as far as I want. Back when I had a gasoline car, I had range anxiety. And I didn't even know it because nobody had invented the term range anxiety until they invented electric vehicles. But have you ever been going to work And you're thinking, holy cow, I've got a meeting, I've got to get there, but I'm on fumes. And now I've also got to think, when I get off work, if I don't go and get my gas before I go in, am I going to have enough gas to get to the gas station? And am I going to be able to afford it? Is the gas station closest to my office the least expensive, the most expensive? I had an app for my smartphone called Gas Buddy where I could see where the cheapest gas was. That's range anxiety. We've always had this about whatever kind of vehicle we had, but until electric vehicles, because they take longer to charge up, it was never really an issue. You may not know this, but when gasoline was first sold to automobile drivers in the United States, it was sold through pharmacies. A pharmacist back then was called a chemist. So the whole world changes when we go from horses to automobiles. The whole world is changing again when we're going from fossil fuel powered vehicles to electric powered vehicles. Now think about in 1995 when Amazon started selling books on the web. We think of books as commodities. It doesn't matter what store you buy it from. You're just looking for the best price out there. If there's a giant warehouse connected to the internet and they can drop ship it to me for cheaper than me going to B. Dalton's, I'll just order it online. Did any of you think in 95 that you would go and see your doctor over the web? That you would conduct business meetings over the web and not travel to all these cities around the world to do business? That you would just sit in front of a screen, they would see you, you would see them. That your phone would be able to do that. Where would we be today as a country if we said, nah, that internet thing, that's a fad, that's liberal, that's not ever going to be anything. Entire industries, the most valuable companies on the planet, are because the internet came about. And electric vehicles are the same thing. There are business ideas that none of us have thought about yet that EVs are going to bring into our world. So they're not political, they're actually economic opportunities for our country and for our planet. Now, you do not sell a vehicle by saving the planet. I hate to tell y'all that. I know we're all here focused on saving this beautiful planet we live on, but that's not how you sell a car. And I did it for 6 years in Texas. With no sales experience, I went to work for the dealership that sold my electric vehicle. I thought, I understand why people aren't buying these things, and I can talk to them in their language. And for 6 years, I was the #1 plug-in vehicle salesperson in the state of Texas. And all you have to do is speak their language. Now, the myths have been out there since day one. Like I said, I got my first one back in August of 2012. Within the first few months, Rush Limbaugh on the radio said that the car that I bought would just burst into flames for no reason at all. That I could only drive 40 miles and then I had to stop and recharge overnight. Both of these were lies. But it was the goal of that particular political bent at that time to fight against EVs. Now it's kind of shifted the other way. But the fact of the matter is, there was a lot of misinformation. And you can go out there on social media and you can fight that misinformation, and I guarantee you 6 months later you'll see the exact same line with the exact same photographs and the exact same text. So you're fighting that battle day in and day out. Myth busting, which is what I now do for a living. I'm now the executive director of the Texas EV Alliance, and we are a nonprofit, a 501c6, that works with state and local governments in Texas to promote EV adoption in the state. Now, some of the ways that the world is changing is everybody thought, oh, EVs are going to be a terrible drag on our grid. And Texas has a reputation for not having the sturdiest grid out there. But the fact of the matter is there is a bill in the state Senate and State House right now to allow connection of electric vehicles to the grid to supply electricity when the grid's under strain. So electricity from electric vehicles will save the grid. Demand for the electricity is not going to bring the grid down. We are actually going to buy that electricity when it's cheap in the middle of the night while we asleep. And the next morning when we're at work and we're plugged into the charger at work and the grid sends out a notification, hey, the grid's under strain, my car will be able to sell that electricity back to the grid at a profit. So now my car is not only something that I spend money on, but it's something that becomes a revenue generator for me. I have never had a car become a revenue generator for me, but I've never been a cab driver or a Lyft driver or Uber driver. But the fact of the matter is, the world is changing in fundamental ways. And when we go against the EV industry, here's the big thing that I worry about. You got to speak somebody's language. When you're in sales, Sales 101 is you listen to the other person to figure out what their biases are, what their leanings are, and then you speak to them in their language. So we're hearing how bad EVs are, and it's hurting the industry. But the way I talk to conservatives about electric vehicles is I say something that kind of blows their minds. I say, you know what? The atomic bomb did not win World War II. And they'll just have this kind of shocked look and look at me and, what are you talking about? I say, now it ended World War II. No doubt about that, but it did not win World War II. What won World War II was American manufacturing, in particular automotive manufacturing, because we changed those giant auto factories into military vehicle factories almost overnight. In the movie Ford versus Ferrari, there's a scene where Henry Ford II, I think, is looking out, and he says, you see that building down at the end of the drive? And the person he's talking to nods his head, and he said, 2/3 of every B-29 bomber that the United States made came out of that building. Now, our number one adversary in the world right now is arguably China. They are producing a giant middle class that's buying consumer products. They're now challenging the United States for its economic dominance of the world, and they're our number one adversary. They also make, right now, the very best electric vehicles you can buy at a pennies on the dollar to what we would pay for them here. We are being outgunned in the competitive business world, which ultimately leads to domination in the military world. Our one chance is to do what Americans have always done. We rise to the technical challenge, we discover these new things, and we land people on the moon. We've got to have a lunar shot like that again, and it's not just for the cars. We've got to look at charging infrastructure. We've got to look at how to tie those cars to the grid to support the grid as well as to draw from it, how to power our homes with the batteries that are in those cars. My brother just went through Hurricane Beryl. It went through Houston, I think it was last year. They went without electricity for over a week. My wife and I took a vacation to Colorado. Kind of odd juxtaposition there, but here's where we're going. We were at 8,000 feet above sea level at night. It was 35 degrees. We were there at the end of May. We camped out in our car. We took a tent with us, but it was our garage. So it's where we carried our backpacks, our clothing, our electric bicycles. We actually slept in the car. We had a bed made for it. And we were comfortable all night long with the heat running. 35 degrees outside, 65 degrees in the car. Each night we used 14 miles of range to stay warm for 10 hours. Even though the battery required that it save 20% of its range so it could get me to a charger, I could have camped there for 21 straight days before I had to think about going into town. My brother in Houston, after the hurricane, could have at least had the respite of sleeping in air conditioning at night if he had an electric vehicle instead of a fossil fuel vehicle. These vehicles are going to take over the world. They are going to take over transportation. There are challenges. Heavy-duty towing over very long distance on a very regular basis is a challenge for electric vehicles. So let's not focus on that right now. What we have to realize, though, that this is the new world that's coming. And if we as a country want to participate in the global economic opportunity that's out there with electric vehicles, we've got to stay in the game. And we've got to stop the political nonsense of, this week liberals hate Tesla and the conservatives love them. Next week, the conservatives hate Tesla and the liberals love them. We've got to stop doing this, guys. This is about the future of the country, and this is an opportunity for us to move the world forward. And you know what? Saving the planet is just a side benefit. Thank you. Once a year we go out to California for vacation, and we're worried about charging infrastructure. And it would be really stunning to see the look on their face. But I would say, you are going to save so much money on the maintenance and fuel for this car that if you want, for that trip to California, even a 2-week trip, You rent the biggest, baddest, most expensive SUV you can get your hands on, gasoline powered, and you take that trip and don't worry about it anymore. But what would blow their mind is say, you know, we're not going to confiscate your gasoline driver's license when you buy an EV. And then they would think about it for a minute, and they'd start laughing. They go, you're right. I have the freedom to use whatever vehicle's best for me for that particular situation. And for all of us, the day-to-day driving, the commuting to our job, an EV is just a better way to go. You know, not only is there no oil, there's no transmission fluid or transmission filter to change. There's no spark plug. There's no timing belt or timing chain that has to be replaced at 100,000 miles. All the things that you have to maintain on a car, other than hoses and tires, are completely different in the electric world.
Well, that's great. Like again, I know when I was in Europe last year, and I've been wanting to rent an electric car, but I didn't do it because I'm going, I don't want to be out of the country, not speaking the right language, and not knowing how to charge up. So I ended up renting an ICE. But my brother drives a Tesla, and he takes it up to visit his daughter from Kansas City to Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yeah.
He has a place he stops for 20 minutes, has lunch, and he's got it all figured out. So,
and that's what people don't realize. When we took this trip to Colorado, an EV driver maps where they're going on a long trip before they ever leave home. They know where they're going to charge, and we just said, our saying is, feed yourself when you feed your car. So
Perfect.
Every time that we stop and refuel, it might take 15 to 20 minutes to charge the car, but if there's a restaurant right there, we'll eat at the same time. And almost always, before I can finish eating, the app on my phone is saying, hey, the car is finished, you need to go move it.
well, we have a client, we had a speaker here earlier today, and a client of mine, Edison Extreme Fast Chargers, that they can charge a car from 10 to 80% in what, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
8 minutes.
Yeah, and that
That's
was a
brand new
very
one.
interesting presentation.
Yeah,
I wanted to talk
so
to you
that'll
about
really help out. I've got some friends that were in Hawaii, and they rented a Tesla and ran it out. And a certain person, I'm not going to name, who runs this place, he runs out his Tesla every once in a while. So anyway, thank you so much for Buzz. You are always bright. Gosh, we've known each other for about 2 or 3 years now. Man.
Right.